To me, obviously, the point that existed above all points was love. Love was the ultimate point. In all of that, I studied also the work of Alice Bailey, did the esoteric healing courses, had some interesting experiences that started to change my perspective while studying Alice Bailey. And I started to consider that there is a definite technology involved within the spirit world. And Alice Bailey's work very clearly indicate the technology, and when I applied it, I had experiences that indicate that it actually had an impact on the reality as we perceive it. In that, I ended up eventually in a dire straits financially and in divorce. After the divorce, I made a decision, discussed it with the ex-wife, and this decision is very specific, that we must forgive each other, must get together, sit down, forgive each other, because forgiveness to me was a very valuable, powerful message. Forgive each other for everything that we've ever done to each other so that we can have a proper relationship to support the children. Which we did. We sat down one evening and we face-to-face would, openly discuss everything we've done and did forgiveness. That continued for about 8 hours. It was very explosive, extremely emotional. It was, in that I experienced an interesting thing. In applying forgiveness, I'm feeling somehow lighter. It's like a burden that's lifted. I decided to go full out. Like I've always done with the stuff, I go full out and test it out, no matter what. So I decided to do it full out, and I did do it full out. And by the end of the first 8-hour session, I was able to perceive things that I've never thought possible. I could perceive virtually another reality right here where we are. And I could experience what was happening within other people. And the more we did forgiveness together, those that would participate in the same group of forgiveness would tend to be able to pick up each other's thoughts and experiences directly. And I found it fascinating that it was showing in the physical body. So I started exploring that and investigating that. I did a lot of reading on that in terms of Louise Hay, Brandon Bayes, all kinds of things that dealt with forgiveness, studying forgiveness, testing it. At that stage I was already doing kinesiology from the perspective of finding within me what is me really, what is self-honesty, what is it, why do I have experiences there where I have one intent, but I will do something differently to what I intend to do. So that didn't make sense, that in the last moment, no matter how good my intent, I will end up doing something else. It's as if you are compelled to protect yourself against some unseen possible point of somebody hurting or harming you. So therefore you might have the greatest intent, you will always act in self-protection in the end. And in the points, fascinatingly enough, where you did push through in your intent, those that notice that you are doing that will deliberately abuse you. So you had this catch-22 where you simplistically could not get past the point of the strangest of abuses that exist. You can profess to be a good person, but when it comes to the self-interest point, to the point of self-protection, you will always regard yourself first and disregard everything else. And you'll justify it. So justification became a very clear point that I realized was causing me quite a lot of uncomfortableness within. I mean, I can justify something, but to, in the end, live with it, I found that very difficult, because it's as if I became weaker if I would allow any point of me acting in opposition to my intent and actually acting in self-interest. So I started forcing myself to deliberately push through the points, to apply my forgiveness, to make sure I don't justify and go through it, no matter what happens, even to the point of my own destruction. And I kept on pushing. Within that, I ended up destroying myself. Ended up with nothing. And that's where I started again, and in that point where I started again, I looked again at reading, and I developed programs, and then I met a man, Rob, that was into video recordings, and he was curious about what we were doing, and I said, look, we're doing a reading project in terms of finding ways to present ways to assist children to be effective readers and have an impact on that, with that on the world. Although obviously our ideas or intent were pretty good, the practical application of that is a different story. They then want to do a recording about, talking about the reading project, and they were doing real-time TV, and they said they will pop in one evening and come and do a shoot. And one evening at about 9 o'clock, they were there with lights and cameras, and at the door, and they were in, and it was cameras running. And this is a real-time story. We were in the lounge, and we were talking, and I was showing them what it was all about, and we ended up talking a little bit about forgiveness and how forgiveness operates. And while talking about forgiveness, the next moment one of the cameramen walked onto set and came and sit in front of me and started challenging me about forgiveness in the Bible specifically, and how I could claim that forgiveness is so valuable. And I suggested to him a simple thing. I said to him, just say with me, let's do forgiveness together. I forgive myself that I have allowed myself not to love myself unconditionally. It's a simple thing. And he looked at me, and I could see it at the tip of his tongue, but he just couldn't speak, so I kept on repeating it, and I took his hand. And as I took his hand, his whole body contracted, like his hand turned into claws, his eyes popped over to white, and he was like unable to speak at all, and his face was contracted, and it was very clear that he had some kind of an event which I did not immediately recognize as anything. To me it could be a seizure, it could be anything. I just kept on holding him and doing forgiveness. And it's only towards the end that I realized that there is something inside him that is causing this. Suddenly that something left, and actually left the house, and at that moment he was back, aware fully, immediately as the thing left. And he ran out of the house, and he came back, and he says all that he remembered was that a blackness came over him, and that only when that blackness was out of him was he back aware. So in the meantime, obviously the cameras were running. To me that was a little bit disheartening, because I have now experienced a form of a possession, but that left the person and actually went hunting or looking for another host. So in effect I have caused more harm than good from my perspective, because whatever it was at that stage was still loose